Snow fell in slow sheets on Christmas Eve while they formed a bright circle on the porch and left a gap where I should have stood, my wrapped fishing rod under my arm, Victor's voice cutting the air with, "Family only tonight, George." Laughter folded over the words like a blanket. The door closed to a blue flicker of lights and the smell of cinnamon steam. My fingers found the reel and felt the tiny metal click. They believed the circle was closed, but that was only half the truth. Back at the lake cabin, the baseboard heater hummed at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, too tired to fight the draft from the water. I set the rod on the table and brushed ice grains from my coat sleeve. The cabin smelled of pine oil and damp rope. On the counter lay the year's calendars, each square scratched with small numbers, tides, and wind. Victor had called the place wasted potential. He had numbers too, always someone else's. He did not know which numbers mattered here. The first surprise belonged to another winter. In 2019, I signed something no one asked about, because no one fought an old fisherman read fine print. I filed it in a quiet office where the carpet swallowed footsteps, and the clock read 3:14 p.m. The clerk stapled the receipt to a manila corner. I walked out with cold air in my lungs, and a thought that sounded like a reel's click. I never mentioned it, but that was only half the truth. On the porch earlier, Sophia held her mug high like a lantern while neighbors waved. "Dad, we're keeping it small this year," she said, not meeting my eyes. A place card sat on the table inside, blue ink under a sprig of holly that read, "Holiday Exclusion." Victor's hand draped casual on her shoulder. "Traditions matter," he added. My grip tightened on the rod tube. The circle laughed at a joke I could not hear. Someone pulled the curtain. The gap where I should stand stayed dark. In the boat shed, the smell of diesel and wet cork steadied me. My old bench wore the stains of varnish and salt, a history longer than Victor's patience. I loosened the rod's butt cap and felt the thread give. The handle slid free with a small metallic note, the same clean click I trusted at dawn. Inside the hollow graphite waited a sleeve of plastic and paper. On top, I kept a printout of the blue card from their table. "Holiday Exclusion," time-stamped to the minute. My phone buzzed. "Dad, you made it awkward," Sophia whispered, wind rattling her words. "It's for the kids." Her breath clouded the line. "Victor said." "Victor says many things," I answered. The lake answered with ice popping like distant knuckles. "Go inside, Sophie. Warm up." She paused at the name. "Please don't do anything dramatic." Looked at the rod and the papers resting inside it. "Already did something patient," I said, and ended the call before guilt could speak for me. The paper on top carried a heading they had never bothered to learn. "Seasonal Occupancy Covenant, Lake Hollow Association, Lease Ford 22A. Below it, a sentence drafted with a lawyer's dry hand, placed reversion on a trigger few would imagine. A condition tied to exclusion by immediate family on December 24th. Witnessed or recorded. Instrument number 2019-04271. People nod at words like covenant and forget they cut both ways. I had asked for one thing in return for a low rent. Respect as a date. 3 weeks ago at the marina, I passed slip 71 on my way to locker 25. Code 1999, what I heard Victor's voice bounce off aluminum. "We get full control by New Year's. Her old man can fish from the public pier." A second voice chuckled about refinancing and a quick improvement loan. I stood out of sight, touching the coil of blue mooring line, as if it were a rosary. It is useful to know what men say when the wind covers their mouths. That afternoon, Emma from next door knocked with her red scarf pulled to her nose. "Mr. George, our doorbell cam caught the porch. Do you want the clip?" Her cheeks were raw from the cold. I watched the footage on her phone while the reel's tiny handle pressed into my palm, clicking once when I breathed. The video held words I already knew and the shape of the circle that did not include me. "Email it, please," I said. "Keep your scarf on. It's dropping below 22 degrees Fahrenheit." I wiped the cork, checked the ferrules, and seeded the sections by habit. The rod had pulled trout from black water under a January sky, had taught my hands to feel current I could not see. I had cut the butt once to make the interior smooth, then sealed it with epoxy the color of old honey. The click of the bell sounded again in my head, steady as a metronome. Men like Victor hear engines and applause. I trust quieter machines. I walked back to the house while the snow gained weight. Laughter spilled from the porch like light. A cousin I barely knew lifted her phone for a photo of the circle. "George, maybe tomorrow," someone said from the steps. "Not tonight." Victor leaned against the rail, smiling like a host. "Be warm," I told them, and raised a thermos in salute. The thermos steamed. The rod case rested easy in my other hand, and the night kept its record without favor or anger. From the gate, I photographed the place card again through the window. Blue ink under holly. Holiday exclusion, along with the mantel clock behind it at 6:42 p.m. The glass bit my fingertips with cold. A child's voice floated up and then was gone. I could taste nutmeg in the air, as if the house itself were breathing. I checked the images and saw tiny reflections of myself in both panes. A thing becomes evidence when it stops belonging to a moment and starts to a file. Victor stepped outside to take a call and noticed me still by the gate. "Thanks, signed off Monday," he said quietly, eyes on the snow, not me. 215,000 by Friday, and we finally fixed this place. The porch light made a clean circle around his shoes. "It was not broken," I said. "It was paid attention to." He smirked. "Enjoy the cabin while you can, old man." The gate latch clicked as I left. Some clicks are warnings. Others are metronomes. Back in the shed, I opened my old laptop. The e-recording portal for the county slept behind a login most people forget exists. After hours, filings queue, stamped by the minute. A banner scrolled about holiday hours and statutory cutoffs. I read the requirements again, like tide tables, acknowledgement, exhibits, notary seal, payment account. A small note said emergency filings by escrow may proceed at any time. The lake creaked against the pilings. Men talk of storms. Paper has its own weather. The heater coughed, climbed to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and settled. I laid out the bundle: covenant copy, receipt, witness list. Exhibit A, the invitation thread that ended with a clean line reading, "You're not on the list this year." Exhibit B, Emma's doorbell clip. Exhibit C, the blue place card still on their table, photographed with the mantel clock. I slid each into sheet protectors like feathers into a book. The rod butt sat open, epoxy ring winking under the benchlight like a patient eye. Footsteps in the snow, then a knock. Emma's dad, Joel, stood with a wool cap and a worried mouth. "You sure you want to stir this up tonight?" he asked. I saw the clip. I poured coffee into a paper cup and handed it over. "Thanks for raising a decent kid," I said. He nodded once. "She said you looked like someone counting waves." I smiled at that. Waves are honest. They show you what is coming if you watch long enough. I spread the images and circled times with a felt pen that bled a little on glossy paper. Holiday exclusion, I underlined, twice. I taped the original printout inside the rod's plastic sleeve for one reason only. I wanted the instrument of humiliation to travel inside the instrument of reversal. People respect objects they can see. Paper by itself can look like noise until a hand lifts it at the right angle, and a silence falls that tastes like iron. At 9:17 p.m., my phone lit up with a number from town. "Rivas Law," a calm voice said when I answered. "Ms. Rivas, it's George from Lake Hollow. We spoke in March about the covenant wording." "I remember. Do you have your witnesses?" "One neighbor, and a video with clear audio." "Good. I will acknowledge the notice and cue the recording through our escrow. You will need a fresh jurat. Can you get a notary tonight?" If the gas station still answers. The station's night clerk called Marta, who keeps a stamp in a zippered pouch and a pen that always starts on the second try. She came in with snow on her shoulders and a smile that did not ask questions. "Signed where the arrow points," she said, stamping the jurat with a sure hand. The sound was a soft thud, like a fish landing on wet wood. I slid the sleeve from the rod, removed the inner packet, and felt the graphite rim click against the bench. People imagine the key line lives at the top. It almost never does. Halfway down, after the definitions that make eyes glaze, sat the sentence I had insisted on and paid for with patience. Reversion upon holiday exclusion by immediate family on December 24th, proved by contemporaneous recording or written witness, with quiet title reverting to lessor without compensation. I read it twice, not to believe it, but to fix my breath. When a clause wakes, it does not raise its voice. I drafted the notice of reversion in block letters that do not shake, even at 41 degrees Fahrenheit. The form required dates, parcel number, and exhibits, listed A through D. I added Exhibit D, a transcript of Victor's Marina boasts prepared from notes I dated 3 weeks prior, by slip 71, locker 25. Men like Victor think wind scatters words. It only files them. I scanned each page, named the files with the county's fussy conventions, and checked the clock against the lake's dark face. When Miss Rivas texted green light, I walked back through the whitening yard. Their port still glowed. I stopped at the foot of the steps and dialed a number from a card I had kept since 2019. County Recorder Night Desk. A woman answered, her voice bright with coffee. This is George Hale. An escrow submission is incoming on instrument 2019-04271. I will present notice at the property now. Understood, Mr. Hale. I will timestamp to receipt. Authority sounds like good weather in small rooms. Victor opened the door with his smile set like varnish. You again. Behind him, the room glittered. Gather the family, I said. Just a minute of your circle. He laughed, but gestured anyway, theatrical as a man certain the ending is already written. Everyone, quip the light for our guest. Sophia wrapped her cardigan tight. A cousin filmed again. I stood inside the threshold where the air smelled of clove and ham. I will be precise, I said. Precision is a kindness. We are not doing this, Victor said, dropping his smile. You owe nothing here except that rod. The room made a small sound, a collective inhale people make when they expect a fall. I lifted the case and rested it on the entry table beside the blue card, holiday exclusion, still under holly. County is on the line, I said, holding up my phone. Miss Lefevre can confirm receipt. Victor's laugh came quick and brittle, but that was only half the truth. I unscrewed the butt cap again, and a clean click filled the quiet like a dropped bead in a bowl. The handle slid away, and I pinched the plastic sleeve free. I set the rod down gently and held the packet at eye level so even the cousin at the back could see. This contains a covenant you did not read and a notice you will not like, I said. Victor, since you prefer to host, be my hands. Open it. Then I extended the packet toward him. Victor pinched the packet between two fingers like something peeled from a boat hull. Legal theater, he said, tearing the tape. Papers slid into his palm. Seasonal occupancy covenant, he read, performing the words for the room. Cute. Sophia's eyes shuffled across the page and then to me. Dad, what is this? A receipt for manners, I said. The cousin lifted her phone higher. The reels lived behind my ribs. Victor smiled again, wider. And if I don't consent to your little stunt? I put my phone on speaker and set it by the blue card. Ms. Lefevre, I said, please confirm intake. Her voice came clear and ordinary, the way bridges look from shore. Intake received for escrow queue, referencing instrument 2019-04271, she said. Timestamp 21:58. Victor shrugged. Paperwork without power. He tapped his screen. Funny thing about holidays, old man. Offices close. Some storms move from the lake inward, I answered. His grin did not move. Laughter rippled through the circle, like slack rope. He held up a page. Reversion upon holiday exclusion by immediate family, he read slowly, savoring. Witnessed or recorded. He looked at the cousin's phone and winked. Recorded by family. That helps me, not you. I reached for Exhibit B, Emma's clip, and pressed play. Victor's voice in the earlier doorway. Family owe me tonight, George. The sound of the door. The hush that followed. The room recognized its own echo and shifted weight. Keep watching, I said. The clock in the frame does more than decorate. Sophia touched the holly sprig card. Who wrote holiday exclusion? She asked, voice thin. Your husband likes labels, I said. Victor's jaw set. Place cards are not legal instruments, he said, brightly. And you were not turned away, you left. Watch the angle where the latch closes, I answered. The clip caught the glint and the note of metal kissing metal, a small, decisive click. Good microphones reward honesty. The room felt it before anyone admitted it. Wind, Victor said, but that was only half the truth. A child wandered in with a toy boat and set it quietly by my shoe, the hull painted blue. I looked down and saw a line of tiny chips along the keel, the kind you get from gravel launches. For a heartbeat, the room smelled like soap and oranges, the way it did when Anna wiped my hands after winter gutters. The boy looked up. Grandpa, is that your fishing stick? It is, I said softly. It taught me patience when voices were louder than water. Victor exhaled hard. Enough nostalgia. He thrust the covenant toward Sophia. Read the penalty paragraph. You think he owns words? She swallowed. Quiet title reverting to lessor without compensation, she read, eyes stalling on the commas. Effective upon proof filed. Victor spread his hands. And where is this proof filed? With Santa? Laughter tried to reappear. I nodded at the phone. Escrow queue holds priority, I said. Notaries do not celebrate weather. A few faces tilted. Curing processes they had never met before. You game this and I sue, Victor said, stepping closer until I could smell cologne over clove. Tortious interference, elder delusion, whatever fits. You cannot sue a tie for arriving, I said. But you can prepare. His mouth twitched. Prepare for this. He lifted the cousin's phone and grinned at the lens. Delete that clip now. The cousin hesitated. Delete it, he repeated. The child's toy boat knocked gently against my shoe. Tap, then tap, like a clock no one could turn off. Sophia put her hand over the cousin's phone. Stop. The word landed with less weight than the room demanded, but it landed. Victor, why did you make those calls about loans? Her voice trembled into the quiet. He laughed, eyes still on me. Improvements require capital. That cabin leaks value every year. It leaks stories, I said. Some cabins are held together by them. A draft slid across the floor. The nutmeg smell thinned. Even laughter needs warmth to live. Numbers survive colder rooms. The doorbell chimed. Emma's dad stood on the porch with his scarf unspooled and his phone held like a passport. You asked me to witness, he said to me. I saw and I can swear. Victor planted himself in the doorway. Neighbors are not authorities, he scoffed. Joel stepped past him anyway. I worked maintenance at the courthouse, level 1. I know where papers sleep. I also know when a latch closes. He pointed at the holly card. Names are for dinners. That one names a wall. From the speaker, Miss Lefevre returned. Mr. Hale, our on-call counsel asks if you want a three-way with escrow counsel, Revis Law, she said. Proceed, I answered. Victor laughed loudly. Conference calls at 10 p.m. on Christmas Eve, he said, spreading his arms. Sure. The line clicked, a sturdier sound than my reel's whisper. Revis Law, keen the measured voice. We confirm jurat time 21:21. Exhibits A through D received. And escrow queue stamped. We advise peaceful notice. No self-help. Victor's smile cracked a hair. Peaceful notice, I repeated. We are peaceable, aren't we, Victor? He lifted the covenant again and waved it like a ticket stub. Notice received, he said, mocking. But possession is 9/10, old proverb. So is memory, I said. And clocks. The Mansell read 10:04 p.m. The room grew too warm for coats and too cold for laughter. You know what I remember, he said softly. Your hands shaking when you signed the refinance 5 years ago. They shook from cold, I said. Not fear. He took one step closer and lowered his voice to a thread that only the front row could hear. You need me, he whispered. You need me to manage things you cannot lift anymore. He touched the rod case with a fingertip and smirked, including this prop. Lift the packet again, I said, so everyone can see what you are not reading. He raised it, grinning. The cousin's camera followed obediently. Most traps work because the proud volunteer their own weight to the spring. I flipped to Exhibit A, the invitation thread printed with exact times. Read this line, host, I said. He cleared his throat theatrically. You're not on the list this year, he read, pitching his voice bright. He glanced up for laughs that did not come. Context matters, he added quickly. Security during holidays. Joel coughed. Security is locks and weather strip, he said. Exclusion is the word used here. Victor's jaw bunched. You all love a show, he said. But that was only half the truth. He dropped the papers on the entry table and spread his arms to the circle. Everyone vote. Keep arguing with an old man on the porch or get back to dinner. A few voices mumbled for plates and warmth. Sophia looked at me with wet eyes. Dad, please, she said. The boat tapped my shoe again. The room turned toward the table like sunflowers. For a moment, I felt the pull of leaving without the click I waited for. That is how men like Victor win. Almost. I gathered the papers, slid them into the sleeve, and reseated the rod handle with that clean, obedient click. I will not keep you, I said, and stepped backward into the cold, where the air became honest again. Victor followed to the threshold. There we are, he said softly. Every story needs its last line. Snow thickened. The wreath scratched the door with each draft, a faint, dry sound. I turned toward the path. My fingers found the rod's balance. The lake held its breath. By the time I reached the gate, his voice carried after me. Bank closes Friday, George, then we begin. The words pushed between my shoulder blades like a hand. He believed the room had turned. He believed the law slept. I believed in cues, clocks, and ink. In the shed, the heater's coil glowed like a coal. I opened the laptop and saw the portal status edge from pending to received. The difference is small on screen. On land, it shifts weather. Ms. Rivas returned to the line. We have priority queue placement, she said. Earliest recording window opens at 01 under holiday rules. Do you want service of notice on occupants at that time? Yes, I said, by email and door posting. We can courier a packet to the deputy on call, she added. The word deputy fit the night. Do that, I said, and copy the association manager. Already flagged. Processes wear quiet shoes when they run fastest. People expect sirens. They miss the click. At 11:06 p.m., Emma knocked again, hair wet with new snow. Mom says come inside if you get cold, she said. I'm good, I answered. She looked at the rod. Why do you keep papers in it? Because it holds steadier than fear, I said. And because men listen when a thing looks like it can hurt them, even when it is only graphite. She nodded, filing that away, the way decent minds do. Do you need anything? A clock that doesn't lie. She smiled and left. I made a list on a scrap of chart. 001 recording, 0010 doorpost, 0730 manager email, 009 bank contact, 0012 association board notice. Each line felt like a knot on a line you can tie with wet fingers. I wrote the parcel number, the instrument number, and the marina note. Slip 71, locker 25, code 1999. The shed smelled of fuel and pine dust. Somewhere across the cove an engine turned over once, failed, and went quiet. Not every machine wants to help. At 11:42 p.m., my phone lit with Sophia's name. Dad, I'm sorry, she said, breath quick. He says I overreacted. Can we talk tomorrow? Tomorrow I will be at the recorder's office in spirit, I said. Tonight, stay warm. Are you trying to take the cabin from us? The us hung between us like a rope with two ends. I am trying to teach a clock to tell the truth, I said. It knew your name before he did. The line went quiet, then ended. I stepped outside and let the snow settle on my eyebrows until the cold reached bone. Across the water, their porch still glowed. A cheer rose at something on a screen, then faded. I listened for the only sound I needed, a mechanical certainty wearing a minute hand. Inside, the laptop chimed. The portal tag rolled to recording window open. I exhaled, long. Somewhere a bell marked midnight from a church that lost its choir years ago. The click I trusted arrived on schedule. I texted Rivas Law, proceed. The reply came with a PDF thumbnail and a terse line, notice of reversion, queued and served. A second ping. Association manager copied. A third, deputy posting en route ETA 026. The shed light cast a circle that looked almost warm. I unscrewed the rod butt and returned the sleeve to its hollow, sealing it with a slow turn until the threads met their home. Precision, Klom's old hands. The graphite sang a tiny, perfect note when it seated. Then the loss pressed in. Not of cabins or paper, but of evenings that should have smelled like cloves without bitterness. I leaned against the bench and counted breaths the way I count waves before a cast. Grief is a metronome, too, but slower. Snow whispered against the door like sand. I pictured the boys' blue boat and my own first skiff, and the small domestic rituals that keep men civilized. The heater clicked again, faithful, and the room returned to work. At 0:23, a cruiser rolled slow down the lane, tires making that wet hiss you can feel in your teeth. Deputy Kincaid stepped out, young enough to still look surprised by paperwork. "Posting for Lake Hollow, notice of reversion," he said, tapping his clipboard. "You the lessor's agent?" "Tonight I'm the tide," I said, and handed him the packet sleeve. He lifted a brow at the rod. "That a first?" "Tools are mostly context," I said. He nodded and walked toward their lit porch. I followed at a distance, boots squeaking. He pressed the notice to the doorframe with blue tape and a clean, official slap that sounded like a fishtail finding water. The wreath brushed his knuckles. He stepped back to photograph the posting with a mantel clock in frame. Inside, movement blinked to the doorway, then froze. The cousin's camera lifted, unsure whom to obey. Deputy Kincaid spoke up, voice steady. "Service completed." 02:29. The word completed hung in the cold, like a bell still vibrating. Victor yanked the blue tape, but the posting held like wet bark. "Get off my property," he told the deputy. Kincaid's breath clouded. "Possession is subject to recorded instruments," he said. "Notice served under Lake Hollow Association Rule 7.3 and Civil Code 1162. The room crowded the doorway, faces framed by bokeh lights. The wreath scratched again, thin and papery. Sophia whispered, "Victor, stop." He laughed without teeth. "Paper can't move bodies." Kincaid lifted his phone to body cam level. "Sometimes it only needs to move time." My phone chimed. An email. From North Harper Credit, read preliminary hold placed. Pending title status change. Case ID 215H71. A second line. Funding temporarily suspended under underwriting guideline 12.4. Victor squinted. "What is that?" "Your Friday," I said. He reached for the screen. "Banks don't close money for fairy tales. They close for risk," I answered. "Underwriters fear clocks more than storms." He snorted. "We will see in the morning." The cousin filmed the email header. Like it might bite. A small SUV slid into the drive, tires whispering. A woman in a navy parka stepped out with a clipboard stamped Lake Hollow Association. "Manager Diaz," she introduced, showing a badge. "We received escrow counsel's copy." She read the posting, then the mantel clock through the window, and nodded once like a surveyor counting stakes. Rule 7.3 allows immediate safety inspection upon reversion notice. Occupants cooperate where risk fee schedule escalation. Victor barked a laugh. "Fee schedule," Diaz's pen hovered. $250 per hour, billed to responsible party. Victor peeled harder at the tape. Kincaid's voice flattened. "Touch that again, and I document tampering with posted notice." The room hushed the way ice does before it breaks. A light blinked on the body cam. "You're making a show," Victor said, breath quickening. "Truth is quieter than you think," I said. "It just uses better microphones." He glared at the cousin until her phone dropped slightly, then remembered the camera on Kincaid's chest and rearranged his mouth into a smile. "Welcome, manager," he said, too bright. The laptop in my shed pings through the tether. Rivas Law texted, "Recorder acceptance pending. Control number RC001241. Expect number assignment within window." A minute later, assigned instrument 2024-1224-00012441, effective 0041. Diaz checked her email and lifted a brow. Title status updated in our portal. Kincaid typed on his MDT. Dispatch notes change logged. Victor looked from face to face, measuring for soft ground and finding none. "You can all freeze out here," he said, "but the party continues." The party did not look convinced. Sophia stepped forward, until Clove and Apology reached me. "Dad, what happens now?" "A planned retreat," I said. The phrase fit the winter like a map fits a coastline. "A shore one, with witnesses." Victor scoffed. "He invents terms." Diaz tapped the covenant. Section 4 calls it planned retreat inspection period, 48 hours maximum. A murmur moved across the circle. The boy with the blue boat leaned into the doorway, eyes following the rod case like a compass needle follows north. The reel clicked in my chest. Diaz lifted a laminated card. "Notice of planned retreat inspection," she read. "We post, photograph, and commence at 8 o'clock. Victor tried a different tack. The marina rumor you printed is libel." I tapped Exhibit D, Slip 71, Locker 25, Code 1999. "Your words were louder than the wind, Victor." He swallowed and looked toward the lake, as if it could edit him. Joel cleared his throat. "Maintenance hears more than people think. Doors, vents, and men who talk into them." The reef scratched like a pencil. Kincaid produced a simple form, acknowledgement of service and entry for inspection under Rule 7.3. "You can sign receipt," he said. "Or I note refusal." Victor's smile returned in pieces. "Note refusal." Kincaid checked the box, the pen clicking with the same clean note as my rod butt. "Copies will go to both parties." Diaz taped the second notice below the first, edges aligned like planks. The camera phones blinked again, then steadied, like a small audience learning the script of a colder play. My speaker buzzed. "Rebus law back," the voice said. "Be admitted the covenant contains a venue provision mandating arbitration before the association's neutral panel, not civil court, for disputes arising from occupancy." Victor brightened. "I will ask for an emergency hearing. Panel calendars post on business days," she replied. "First opening January 3rd. He stared past us into the room where plates cooled. "Mrs. Harassment." "This is process," Rivas said. "It owns worse hours than you do." The line clicked off, efficient as tide. A final email landed. "North Harbor Credit, loan file 215H71 suspended per title defect. Borrower contact restricted until curative action. Appraisal hold. Reinspection fee $375. Victor read and went colorless around the mouth. "You cost us Christmas," he said to me softly. "You sold your own story for paperwork. You tried to trade my story for debt," I answered. The boy's boat tapped my boot and stopped. Even the toy understood pauses more than we did. Inside, the mantel clock ticked without asking permission. Diaz unrolled a thin measuring tape and checked the clearance around the entry. Then the smoke alarm test button, each beep cutting the warm air into squares. "Inspection at 8 o'clock means the structure should be reasonably quiet by 01, she said. "Voluntary exit reduces friction." Sophia looked at the tree, then the notices, then me. "We can finish at our place," Joel offered gently from the hall. Victor lifted his hands like a referee. "Everyone out in 10. Show's over." The cousin finally lowered her phone. Period. The circle dissolved into coats and apologies that smelled like wool and sugar. Someone dropped a fork. Someone laughed too loudly and stopped mid-note. Sophia pulled the boy's hat over his ears and kissed his forehead. "Tomorrow morning will be cold," she said. He looked at me and whispered, "Can we fish when it's warm?" "We can learn to wait," I said. The blue boat went into a pocket. The porch emptied the way tide retreats from a flat, leaving the shapes of what tried to stand. At 1:07, the house sat quiet, except for the mantel clock and the dry brush of the wreath. Diaz took a final photo. "See you at 8 o'clock, she said, and stepped off the porch. Kincaid logged his time and touched the brim of a hat he was not yet old enough to own by habit. "Night, Mr. Hale." "Night, Deputy." He glanced at the rod. "Nice hiding spot." "It was patient," I said. He chuckled and left tracks that filled slowly with blue snow. I slept 2 hours in a chair by the shed window. At 7:22, the sky bruised pink over the ice. The heater complained up to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. I brewed coffee that tasted like pennies and relief. At 7:31, Diaz's SUV pulled in again, followed by a white pickup marked Association. She wore the same calm as midnight. "Morning," she said. "We do this by the book." She set a binder on the porch table where the holly card had sat. then looked at the entry like a judge looks at a door. Inside, we checked smoke alarms, GFCIs, the crawl space hatch, and the flue. Diaz's flashlight made combs of breath in the cold rooms. "Write this down," she said to an assistant. "Seal tear, above window, loose deck lag, carbon monoxide battery." She turned to me. "Acceptance of reversion must be signed by an authorized agent. Are you available?" "I am present," I said, "and I am authorized." She placed the one-page form on the table and set a capped pen above the signature line, like a compass point. The front door swung. Victor stepped in, hair damp, jaw tight. "We're not done," he said. Diaz raised a palm. "Inspection in progress. Please wait outside." He ignored her and reached for the knob of the back bedroom. The key turned half and stopped. Diaz did not look surprised. "Rule 12.4, she said. "Key controlled during inspection. Temporary cores were installed at 0630. He blinked. "You changed my locks." "Association locks," she corrected. "Language matters." His knuckles whitened. Language always mattered more than he liked. On the entry table lay the blue card. Moved but not gone. I slipped it into a sheet protector and wrote Exhibit E with a fine tip. Victor watched, incredulous. "That is a place card." "It is a photographable label of an exclusion," I said. "Paper is much of what survives a night. You cannot make symbols into law." "Law makes symbols into boundaries," Diaz said, without looking up. The assistant snapped another photo of the notices on the door, each edge square within the frame. While Diaz tested the furnace shutoff, I set the rod case on the table and foiled the butt a quarter turn. The click settled the morning. For a breath, the cabin smelled like soap and oranges again, and I saw Anna pulling a chair closer to the stove, one winter when the pilot kept dying. I centered the pen. The room held steady. Names come and go around a table. Instruments do not mind who speaks, only whether the ink faces the right way. Kincaid stepped in with a small envelope. "Fob surrender," he said. "Mr. Victor, association requests return of gate device pending arbitration." Victor laughed once, sharp. "Try to take it." He looked at me as if I were the taker. I nodded at the envelope. "Or I document refusal and add fee schedule under Rule 9.2, Diaz said calmly. The cousin, who had drifted bad for the morning show, lifted her phone again, silent now. Victor's shoulders dropped. He slid the fob into the envelope, without words. Diaz tapped the signature line with her pen and turned the form so it faced me square. Kincaid angled his body cam to catch the page and the mantel clock. The assistant held the binder open. The blue card rested above the header like a label on a crate. I set my hand, pressed the nib, signed acceptance of reversion, Lake Hollow Association, Instrument 2024-12-24-001241. Diaz nodded once. I lifted the page, slid it into the sleeve, and turned the deadbolt.